Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, March 29th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And Joel, how you doing? It's been a while. It's been a week since we talked, but I hope you're doing well.
Doing fantastic. It's we've had some interesting. I think we're in our third spring this week. We're vacillating between spring and winter. So
okay,
I just like to call this time of year spring number 3.
Spring number 3. Okay, yeah, that's better than trying to create an acronym out of spring and winter. So I like that. Spring number 3. That's good.
Yeah.
Now the only question is how many more springs are there going to be? And I know you don't know the answer to that, but I mean conceivably there could be a lot of them.
There could, but next week I'm actually going to be in Florida where it will be 85 every day. So at least in my world, we'll go directly from spring number 3 to summer.
Aha, okay, yes. So basically you're going from spring number 3 to summer, then you're coming back to spring. So basically your seasonal clock is going to be completely out of whack by the time you're done.
Exactly. And so, I just roll with it, of course, and we'll look at it, and we'll deal with whatever comes along. But it's going to be great to get down to Florida, see family, and be able to enjoy. Because we've had I don't like to call the winter good or bad. We have certainly had our share of winter with that weird break of August, where I'm sorry, not August, but February, which was an exceptionally warm February. So.
Hence calling it August. I can
weird.
Understand. Yeah. Well, if you have a warm February, you're going to call it August. It makes sense. So.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but life's really good. Things are going very well. Very excited about just so much good stuff is happening. And, I've had, I know we're working on our book that we're, collaborating with, my co-host of the show. You're doing some stories. It's just a exciting time in a lot of ways, especially for LOA Today.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is an exciting time for sure. And, one of the things that I've wanted to really focus on a lot more in the last, since you and I were doing it, we've both been wanting to do this, is on the storytelling side of things. Because the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell to others directly impact our lives in ways that many of us, before we even explore this stuff, even understood. So this is not just a timely topic. This is an evergreen topic. This is a topic that just goes on and on and on and on. And we figured, we haven't really addressed that one lately. And you posted something on your Facebook timeline that says it is always your story about the situation that causes your stress, never the situation itself. So I said, this is a good time to start talking about stories again. So let's talk about stories today. What do you think?
I love it. And that concept that you just described is everything that the law of attraction is about. It's about life is going to happen, somehow. And I had this in another post because, there's been some recent articles and some psychologists that have said, the positive thought and all that stuff is not effective, and it's actually harmful to some people, and
harmful,
but harmful, yes, because it keeps them away from the benefit of stress and the benefit of some of the stuff. And I think I get what they're saying. The concept that we are not, and I think we get this, and even though we have some minor differences in our personal belief in some of this, but I think in general you and I are on board. It is this concept that it isn't just think happy thoughts and beautiful things happen. That's not it. It would be wonderful. It's about just this topic that you're talking about, telling the story that you need it to be. What is your story? Within every event that happens in your life, you'll hear this often. Losing your job when you didn't expect to is traumatic. There isn't a way to look at that in any other way than it being traumatic. However, it will allow you to get to that chance to do something new. It will allow, while it's going on, there is an understanding that it's hard to tell somebody, congratulations, you just lost your 20-year career. Doesn't sound that would be heartless, even though I unintentionally done that a few times. I've had to learn not to do that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. But the other part of it that I'm really excited about is and you're getting this, and I want our audience to understand, it's what you tell the story that becomes your reality. If I were to go in great detail of my story, my history, and everything that I've been through, there's two stories. There's more than two, but there's two sides to look at it. I'm either one of the biggest failures in the history of the planet, or I've had one of the greatest comeback stories in history as well. And it's which story I choose to tell. Do I tell all the negative? Do I make it about what happened, or in a bad way, and look at what I've been victimized on this, and the world has treated me unfairly. I was dealt a very bad hand, and blah 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 blah. Or do I say I learned resilience? I came back. I fought hard. I did a battle of that brought me to this place. Which story I tell is my story to tell. And that is the law of attraction. It's taking whatever life throws at you and then telling the story to match what you want it to be, and it becomes your story. It becomes reality.
And which is an incredibly powerful thing. In fact, I really believe it's something that even within LOA circles, and there are quite a number of people within LOA circles, even within those circles, the importance and even the art of telling our stories and telling better stories, telling the stories that serve us well, that's actually an underdeveloped skill, I think. I think there's a lot more we can learn to do in that way. And so I think that's why I like the idea of doing this topic. You were describing how you could be telling one of two different kinds of stories. And as I'm hearing you saying it, I'm thinking in my head, why would anyone not want to tell the second story? It's such a better story. And yet, that's not necessarily what people do when they're in that place. They still get stuck. We still get stuck. I've done it myself. We still get stuck in telling the old story. Why do we get stuck in telling that old story, do you think?
I believe it's a conditioned, a conditioned way of behavior, conditioned way of thinking. It is the role of victim, or the role of the world has been unfair to me. That mentality is somehow, for some people, it's seeking absolution. Some people that are seeking pity. Some people, it's not your fault. And the message of self-responsibility and the strong message that the law of attraction delivers, it is not a soft message at all. It is a very firm message. You and you alone are responsible for your happiness in your situation. And that is getting further away from where traditional psychology is going, where nothing is anyone's responsibility, because we're all a victim of name calling and all this. And, you need to be treated softer, and you need to be, and again, people go through traumas, and wherever you're at with all that, I'm not minimalizing events that happen, but I've used this generic story, and I've made it very generic about this lady that was seeing the same psychiatrist for many years.
Right.
And the debate that she was going through with the psychiatrist, at one point seeing 3 times a week, paying $200 each visit to see him. Mm-hmm. Each day they discussed whether her father molested her or not. Now, I'm an advocate for children, and I'm an advocate for so this is not a minimalization.
Oh, in a big way. Yeah.
Took place there.
You're probably one of the biggest advocates for children I've ever met. So yes.
Right. So there's zero tolerance in my world for that behavior. But at some point, after multiple years of trying to figure out her father had passed away, she was stuck in the debate. And what freed her is when we sat down at almost the first session, and I said, look, I'm saying this with the utmost respect of what you've been through. Let's pick a side and move on. Because either way, you're stuck in the concept of did it or didn't happen, versus if it did happen, we're going to pick up and move on. If it didn't happen, I'm going to pick up and move on. But you're not picking up and moving on. You're not putting a period behind that. And the story that she was able to tell of changing that regardless if it did or didn't, she lost many years of her life in pursuit of the question. And this is where telling your story, what are you going to tell? The idea that, I have a felony conviction. I have a horrible thing that I went through with an addiction. My behavior was deplorable during that time. I did many things that I could, that I am not proud of what I did. A lot of stuff in my addiction I didn't do. I could either become that or stop that and become the person that I want to be, the person that I'm capable of being, the person that helps other people, that is the opposite of that person. I don't want to be trapped in the memories of what I did or the guilt of what I did and move on. And there's that idea is sort of that enforced resilience, that learning from the process of trauma, learning from the process of what we go through, is sort of going the opposite direction of this idea. Let's unintentionally, this isn't what they're meaning, but the coddling of the trauma, in a sense, is none of your behavior is your responsibility because you were traumatized, is the message. And so people then, when you tell the story, it actually behooves them. It's like telling the story of, it's funny how many times I've used references. I've been there, but the day that I went to the Social Security office to change Justin's Social Security card,
right, yeah,
and I'm looking at everybody's there, and they're practicing the story of how disabled they are. That they're creating the negative because they're seeing the benefit or their perceived benefit of the $900 a month disability they're going to get. So they're literally rehearsing in the lobby what they're going to tell the person, because they want to tell the story of disability and what they can't do. And that's such a negative reinforcer versus telling the story of what you can do. But it didn't fit that situation. So we've been given the illusion of the more helpless story we tell, the less responsibility we have for it, which is the exact opposite of the fact.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's, I just feel inside how trapped we make ourselves feel, so that we keep repeating that story over and over again. As you, especially when you finish that, I'm just living in that space, and I'm saying, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to live in a different space, and I've only been in for 10 seconds. I mean,
well, that's the point of telling the different story. Part of the, part of where we go with it is, it's handed down. It's generationally. I don't know where this came from, or I don't know the benefit of it. And I guess it's, somehow people talk about you need to be humble, and you need to, and humility to me is simply, my definition of humility is the art of being teachable, is when you don't know everything. That's very good. I just think being humble is understanding that you don't know everything and you want to learn more. The idea that I am successful and I have the life that I love, and when I don't want to say it to make anybody else feel bad. I say it to say, look, if I can do this, I'm a train wreck when you look at what I went through.
Yeah,
if
true.
I can do this, anybody can do it. This isn't about me bragging where I'm at. It's about, wow, look, I stumbled through it and didn't do it very well for a long time, and still figured it out. So there's hope for everybody, no matter what we're going through. There's the idea of that storytelling is reinforced in, what you believe, future storytelling. And, you've heard me say this before in regards to 12-step meetings for people dealing with addiction. One of my worst things that I correct people on all the time, and I've had multiple battles in 12-step meetings over this. For example, what they want me to say is, hi, I'm Joel. I'm a compulsive gambler. That's what they want me to say. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I am not defined by that. I don't mind saying, hi, I'm Joel. I'm a long time recovering compulsive gambler. I don't mind saying that. I've been in recovery I've been in recovery much longer than I ever gambled. So the idea that which is my definition, me telling that story, it isn't about what I am currently. It's a piece of my, I do need an explanation why I've hit a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. So I do have no problem saying I'm a long-term recovering compulsive gambler. But the idea that people get offended by that, no, you are a compulsive gambler. I'm like, no, actually, I'm not. It's been almost 23 years since I placed a bet. I'm really not.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying I'm cured from the whole concept of addiction. I am saying that I am in recovery, and that's the story I want to tell. When you get up every day of your life, you tell and not only the story you tell outwardly, the story you tell inwardly. What is your story? And that's what you believe. If you're stuck in a mundane job and nothing's going on and you feel trapped, well, that's the story of your reality. If I helped a young man see the other day, he has a really bad job. He works, it's one of the worst jobs in Richmond. It's washing cars and there's a chain of car washes. It's in Richmond. They have like 10 different locations. And you can imagine the turnover rate of the car wash is just unbelievably high.
I would imagine, yeah.
And yeah, they pay minimum wage.
Right.
And then they, when it's 33 degrees outside and a 60 mile an hour wind, they're washing cars.
Yep.
And it's miserable.
It is.
It really is. It's hard to put a really good spin on that. But he was just horribly depressed, felt trapped, that the people there treated him poorly, and the more he argued with them, the more they treated him poorly. And the whole concept was he was just stuck in this job. And we were talking. I said, look, you need to look for. Obviously, your job needs to be looking for another job. But until then, you can't leave a job you have because you are relying on that money. What you have to do, or what I hope you do, is nobody has to do anything. What I hope you do is I want you to make it a challenge to say, look, I am going to just excel. I'm going to be the best car wiper in all of the company. I'm going to just do it. I'm going to put my head down, and I'm going to be here 8 hours wiping cars. I can handle anything for 8 hours. And we worked on him adjusting what that perspective is. He would get up. He used to have these panic attacks before he'd go to bed, worrying about getting up and going to work. He actually started getting excited about going to work.
Wow.
And he was able to readjust his view of what that looked like. Now, knowing that this is a stepping stone to another job, not the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's critical.
That attitude change, yes. That attitude change then had him very aggressively. As soon as he got off work, he would do online applications. And then, the problem with online applications is how do you get somebody to look at it?
Right.
So then he had a resume that he would then go by the places he applied for the night before and hand out his resume. And say, I applied online. I just want to let you know that I really want to work for your company. And even though I know this is not how you normally do it, he did that every day for 2 weeks. And then he actually went to a Costco, which is, really a good place to work. It's one of the better places to work as far as employees' ratings and stuff. Mm-hmm. And spoke with the assistant manager and said, I really, like the young man. So come on back, I'll interview. I actually do need a position, just came open. We haven't advertised it yet. Hired him on the spot. He got a better job. It pays, I think, like $12 an hour. Much better working conditions. Very excited about it. And he's applying the same principle that he did there, except it's a lot easier to love a job that you actually really love. And all that emanated from him changing the story he was telling about a situation.
Yeah.
And when we look at it, that's the key. It really is the answer. We get stuck in the resistance of everything. And it's that storytelling is a great way to break resistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot about that resistance. In fact, I've been trying to be more practical in applying, like, okay, so what does it take to change my own story? And a few times I've actually sat down to try to write my own story. Now, as you know, I'm a pretty good writer. I'm editing a book, for goodness sake. And yet I get the most amazing writer's block when I try to write myself a new story. It's just incredible. So I've really been exploring this whole idea of storytelling. In fact, I've been doing research online, finding are there any workshops for people who want to do storytelling, or are there coaches and so forth? And there are people who do that kind of thing. And one of the things I found is that, they have these educational websites where you can take courses and so forth. One of them is called Khan Academy, and there's a course there that was actually created by Disney called Pixar in a Box. So, Pixar Studios, and they're basically taking the people who work at Pixar and making videos and so forth of them talking about storytelling. So I said, oh, that looks pretty cool. So I just started watching the very first few videos, and the second or third video, after the video, they just were basically in the first videos talking about storytelling in a very general sense and how we do it from a very young age. They even interviewed some of the storytellers who were involved at Pixar and asked them, so how did you get involved in storytelling? And, it was anything from there was one woman who used to draw Betty and Veronica. She would take a Betty and Veronica from an Archie cartoon and trace them out and then create fashions for them, so the very earliest steps of storytelling. So I thought, okay, well, that's pretty cool. And then they took us to an exercise, because this is actually a course, right? So the first exercise I thought was really interesting because it made me think about kind of what you do. The first exercise was, can you think of a memory, any memory that's a strong memory of yours, and then can you say something about it in a way that ties in emotion? I thought, wow. That's exactly what you try to do. You're trying to find ways to help your clients develop take an old memory and turn it into a new memory by learning how to tie the emotion to it.
Right. Beautiful. Incredible way of doing it.
Yeah. I thought that was, in fact, I'm actually going to explore this thing further to see, is there something in it for those of us who want to learn to be better deliberate creators? Because this whole storytelling, they wrote this thing obviously for people who want to do animations online or who want to become movie directors or whatever. But why can't we use something like that? Why can't we use that to teach ourselves how to be better storytellers for ourselves in our own lives?
And part of what and funny you say that, it's funny how things match. One of the courses I'm working on, or one of the tracks that I'm working on, is a resilience course, and helping people with resilience and using the law of attraction to enforce resilience in your life. And the term that we start off as the beginning phase and the learning phase, and then the final phase of my course is learning to be the director of your life. And that, like you said, being a director of, you get to direct the story you tell, which has the direct impact on your life. You are the director. You are the pointer of your life. You get to, and that answer, it grades on people. In fact, what gets lost in this, and where I think, because the more I see the law of attraction gain strength and people understand it more, there's always going to be a pushback from negative thinking folks.
Oh, sure.
And people, that's just how it works. So the positive thought is a piece of it. It is not simply saying my life is great and it becomes great. It's about believing. It's about feeling. It's about acting like it. And that's something that most people who say, well, the law of attraction doesn't work, is one day they say, okay, my life's great. And then 20 minutes later, oh, that didn't work. No, it's not going to work just by doing that. Yeah. And that's the principle, that understanding where resistance comes in is when you think about something too much, no matter how positive or how negative, it is resistance. And that's a piece that is very much a hard thing to understand. If I know a guy said he was telling himself he's convinced he's going to win the Powerball.
Oh, right. Yes.
I'm really convinced that that's my way out. And he was spending $100 two times a week, $200 a week on Powerball tickets.
Wow.
And I said, so what you're doing, you're spending over $10,000 a year on Powerball, And when you do that, you are so focused on it, you're demonstrating that you don't believe it can happen. So you have to go cover, all that. What I think it's 50 tickets you get for $100. So you're buying 50 tickets. Not that I think that's the Powerball is a legitimate way to do it, because I don't think most people believe they can win it. But if you're going to win it, you're going to win it on one ticket. If you really believe it, you don't need 50. But you're saying you don't. The action is not matching your belief you're going to win, and that's sort of in life when you don't have a matching action. The law of attraction is more complex than just see, and that's why I love the storytelling piece, because the storytelling piece sort of bypasses the resistance piece. Resistance piece, or not bypasses as much as it helps do it, because you're actively telling the story as it is going to be. Mike Dooley touches on this in his newer book called Playing the Matrix. It's that concept of telling it as it is, and understanding that the process, we get stuck in the process a lot. When the law of attraction has the process, it'll do it how it'll do it. Trying to dictate the process is a very ineffective way to make the law of attraction work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So when you're sitting with a client and you know that, well, this is going to be true almost all the clients, I think, but you know this particular client needs to change their story. How do you get them to start inventing a new story?
Well, and again, every individual has their stuff, but I'll do a sort of a general thing.
Yeah, when you make up a scenario or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I have recently a young man. He's 22, has some addiction issues, some sexual abuse as a child, and his story is one of victimhood, and he has a lot of evidence of being a victim. He's victimized multiple times. He was placed in the system treated him poorly. He was placed in he was abused in foster care. He has a lot of a big story that says I am a victim and I'm powerless in my world. He has that.
Yeah.
So I have them tell their story as they see it right now. And then I help them see, in this young man's case, I help him rewrite the story by saying, I see a man that was horribly abused, that was treated in an ungodly fashion as a child when he was powerless. But I see a man that's has survived. I see a man that's grown. I see a man that's here wanting to get better. I see a man that is resolved to fight what happened. And I help him change the story. And I said, what does it look like when you get on the other side? And you help it. Are you going to help other people that's been through the same thing? Or are we going to what's your story look like going forward? We know your story going backwards. And I help him construct a story with whatever their future goals will be about strength, about what has happened as a strength. This happened. Now you survived it. Can you see the strength in that? The idea that you are stronger than what tried to break you. And when you live in that strength of understanding that, there's a great power. So he can tell that story going forward using the strength he's obtained, or making it a strength of what he's been through.
So
that's sort of the one example.
Yeah. So in other words, you start by getting them to tie into the emotions of what did happen in the past okay, there's our starting point. And then you help to start changing the story by getting them to tie into another emotion that grew out of it, that was a more positive emotion. And by finding that new, more positive emotion, that gave you a new platform for telling the next part of the story in a different way from the way the first part of the story was told.
Right. And as with everything, one of the people that I love to give the example of, I've used him in some older segments that we've done, is the story about a young man who was born with a severe he was born prematurely and put into an oxygen tent, and that caused him to have a hearing issue. And he was horribly picked on as a kid. He had a terrible speech impediment. He had these back in the late 60s, I believe. He had these huge hearing aids. I mean, they weren't like they are today. These were just, almost microphone, big old speakers on his ears, and he was geeky, and people picked on him, and he didn't know what to do.
Sure.
He had a horrible childhood, and then he started working out. He started lifting weights, and he started getting stronger, and he was in the gym constantly, and he just kept working and working and working. All of a sudden, he was a massive individual.
Mm-hmm.
He still had the hearing impediment, but nobody was ever going to say anything to him because he was 260 pounds of raw muscle, and he started competing in bodybuilding contests, and he eventually got a TV show where he played the Incredible Hulk, and he goes on to fame and fortune, and he does a lot of stuff. And I've actually talked to him, but I've heard him tell this, and I've asked him about the story. And when he tells his story, he said, "I don't tell the story of the abused child or the victimized child. I tell the story of the strengthening of those that tried to victimize me." He said, "I would not go back and change it. I would not go backwards and take this away because that made me the Incredible Hulk."
That's right.
That event made me who I am today. I have a lot of money and fame and fortune because of what happened. I look at that as a strength. He retells the story, and it's either one. Either story is true. Which one does he give the power to? And that's amazing.
It's funny what you're talking about. Of course, is the story of Lou Ferrigno, and that
Absolutely.
story. That story is truly the story of how someone started with a really bad story and became a superhero.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it. I believe there's variations of that for all of us. And again, this is where I think a lot of rub comes with modern psychology and therapists processing of, well, no, you nothing can come over this horrible stuff. Let's teach you to be more victimized by it. That's a lot of the cases here. And I think, you asked the question earlier, how did we get here? And I think that's where it comes from is the word blame, we talked about the word blame before. The word blame we have become a society of who is at fault on everything. And the truth is our situation is our responsibility, period. There's other people that can do things, but it's our interpretation of what goes on. The idea that Lou Ferrigno was horribly bullied as a child. Well, he's certainly not bullied now.
No.
He hadn't been bullied for many years.
Right.
Yeah. From the time he was about 15 on, there was nobody bullying Lou Ferrigno.
Right.
And he changed that. And, we get stuck on little bits of things happening in our life, and it just gets redundant in a much different scenario, very different line of thought. Somebody asked me the other day, I have Justin's my son. I've recently adopted him, and TJ and Chris are my other sons, and during this time of everybody asks, I love dogs, and everybody says, well, Joel, why don't you guys have a dog? Every boy needs a dog. Well, my answer is not the truth, by the way. I'm going to tell you my answer. And it's my story that I'm telling. My story is, look, there's days when I leave the house at 7:30 and we don't get back till 8 o'clock at night. Justin has Taekwondo training. I have stuff. And, having a dog means it's not fair to the dog. That's my story. Mm-hmm. And there's some truth to it, but that's my story. There is. Well, the real truth is when I was a small child, we had a dog named Tippy. And Tippy was like this incredible dog. We had him for like 15 years. And when Tippy died, short of my son dying, I've never felt so much grief.
Oh, wow.
It was horrible to lose that dog. I don't know why, but it was just, it really, I'm the one that took Tippy to be put to sleep. And it was so incredibly difficult. There's a lot of grief to that. So, in order of, no disrespect to my mother, but in order of things that have happened in my life, losing my son is far and away the worst that ever happened. But then my dog, and that stuck with me. part of the reason, and probably the main reason, because I could get all the help we needed to help with the dog. But the truth is, I don't ever want to go through that again with the dog. Ever.
Yeah.
That's the true story.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so I tell another story to make, because that story, so I do it where it sounds more logical, but there are stories within our, and I'm usually really good. I'm better at this actually with my son. I'm usually really good at focusing on, the dog brought me all this happiness for all those years. That's what I could focus on. But all I can remember is just how devastating it was to lose that dog. And also, that was not necessarily a great time in my life, and that was happening. A lot of things were starting to fall apart.
Mm.
So that has another picture to it. There's multiple stories in our life that I try to share that we create to match what we want to believe. I hear the victimization. Every job I've applied for, I hear people tell me this all the time. Nobody wants to hire me, and I'm like, really? I mean, every job, everybody, nobody wants to hire you. Right now in Richmond, I get this thing. I'm on these job boards for my clients. I help clients find jobs. There are 33,000 jobs available in Richmond today.
Mm.
Now, let's cut half of those and say half of them are just, there's jobs. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of jobs. And there's people that are I hear people all the time, I can't find anybody to work. Yet I'm hearing people say, I can't find a job. Nobody will give me a job. And in both scenarios are stories that both sides are telling.
Yep.
And it's just amazing that it applies in 15 different areas of your life. I can't, I can't find that significant other. I can't find a relationship. I can't find these things. I can't find a job. I can't find happiness. Those are stories that you're telling that are real. And so the concept of storytelling in an appropriate manner, and I love your idea of one day we need to actually develop a course and how to tell your story. That would be a great book unto itself of how to construct your story of what you want it to be. Now, it isn't as simple as saying, I'm going to write a story about me having a 70-foot yacht and 19 houses around the country. That can be part of the story, but that isn't a story when you're dealing from this position. You got to tell a believable story, one that you really believe, one that can really happen.
Yes.
And that's important.
Yeah, because if you don't believe it, you can project it all you want to, but your belief will actually work against it, and so it'll never manifest. You have to actually get to the point where you really deeply believe it for it to manifest. Simple fact. That's how law of attraction works.
That becomes the key, and there's a mention of this. The reasons I'll tie this in a second, but they're generally viewed. There's 12 universal laws. And the law of attraction is just but one of the laws. And now the first law is the law of divine oneness, that everything is connected. The second law is the law of vibration, which is a direct lead into the law of attraction. But often discussed, the name of my next book is going to be, or one of my next books is going to be the law of action. Mm-hmm. It actually comes before the law of attraction. In the list, I mean, there's the law of correspondence, the laws of cause and effect, the law of compensation. I'm trying to think. Then I think number 7 is the law of attraction. It's one of the laws that take place inside of the universe. Law of attraction gets the most attention, but you have to understand that this is a piece of the universal laws, and they all tie together. And the storytelling is a direct factor, the vibration that they talk about, the vibrational law, that everything has a vibration. Abraham Hicks talked about this. Some of the first ones that use the term vibration, but the story can create a vibration that you can make it real. I remember telling you, and when I first, how I ended up in Richmond, the Richmond area, was I was in South Carolina, and I wanted to open. I had a vision of a treatment center that I wanted to open. And it was, I wanted to deal with addiction on a different level, particularly the gambling addiction, because nobody was treating that in my belief in a appropriate manner. I was running a treatment center for gambling in South Carolina, but the funding we had was very limited, and I couldn't implement the program that I wanted to implement. But I always had this vision of what I wanted to do.
Mm.
Randomly one day, a man shows up and tells me that he wants to open up a treatment center in Virginia, and he almost word for word had my vision.
Cool.
And now in my telling the story and telling what I wanted, I didn't necessarily create it for me, but I did create, in my mind, I did bring about that treatment center. I ended up running that treatment center for 5 years and being, director in the treatment center. It was wonderful and a great opportunity. And I really got to implement a lot what I wanted to do. That was something that I told a story about wanting to see happen. And it appeared. It magically appeared. And there was no logical way to explain it. Now, I always envisioned it being my treatment center. And in a sense, it was because I was running it. But it was his. And now it's in a different direction. He's still running it. And I'm doing something differently now. But it's that same concept that got me here. And it was that vision that I saw happen. So I always find it amazing. I mean, everything almost like the ideal location, the old home, this big mansion on 400 acres, a lot of holistic approach. I mean, it was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So it did show up.
And I'm grateful that it did show up because that's what enabled you and I to meet. Or virtually meet anyway. We've actually never met in person, but we met virtually online and through the interviews and so forth, because you were actually my 12th interview for the podcast. And I'm really glad that it happened, because it happened because you made that connection happen through the law of attraction. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you can see, and so that the storytelling piece is so awesome. It is a tool that's overlooked, and it's a tool that is dismissed by a lot of people. But telling the story, and you, as I said, see what the first question: ask yourself, what story am I telling now?
Mm-hmm.
What do you really feel? What do you really believe right now? And that's the story you're telling. Changing that story becomes paramount to the actual change you need to happen. The story has to be believable. It has to be something you want. It has to be something you could really envision. The idea at my age and my athletic ability on the basketball court, I could all day want to be score 30 points a game in the NBA. No matter how bad I want that, Walt, I don't believe that can happen.
Yeah, if you don't believe it, you're dead. And I can understand why you wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not possible for somebody to, at some point at my age, to go do something similar to that. I'm just saying I don't.
Exactly.
I wasn't good at basketball when I'm 18. God knows I'm not good at it now. And nor I have desire, nor do I even like sport. It angered me that bad over the years.
It's like the old joke about the kid who broke his arm, and he's at the doctor's office getting the arm set, and after the doctor finishes, the kid looks up in the doctor's eyes and said, "Will I ever be able to play the violin?" And the doctor says, "Well, of course." He says, "Good, because I never could before."
Yeah, exactly. That's that concept of if everything that has to happen when I'm working with people telling their story, part of the deal is getting to tell a plausible story. The idea that I want to tell a story that is something that is plausible, that could really happen. And the story can evolve as you go. But again, it's going to be hard, if you're making $45,000 a year, and then you magically say, I'm telling a story I make $1.6 billion a year. That's not, and again, not impossible, but it doesn't seem to be the most logical step. But you can easily go from 45 to 60. And when you're making 60, you can easily go to 80. And then 80, 100 is right around. You do it in the way, you tell the story in a believable way that you could at least see it unfolding, believe it unfolding. And that's where that law of action, the law of thought, the law of vibration, all that comes together, because you will then be behaving in a way that matches what your story is telling.
You mentioned earlier we should probably do a book about storytelling. I'm wondering if maybe a book isn't enough. And the reason I say that is most of us, I know for myself, it's really true, and I suspect it's true for almost all of us, learning to tell a new story is not easy to do by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, when you're working with your clients, you're working with them directly. They're getting some direct feedback. They're getting, some coaching, some, come on, you can do it, and let's look at what your strengths are and all that kind of thing. Reading that out of a book is I mean, it's probably going to work for some people, but I'm wondering how many people it won't work for. And so I'm thinking maybe it needs to be like a workshop, or maybe even a series of workshops, or something with more direct human interaction, because storytelling is all about human interaction.
I have actually proposed to one of the middle schools that are this whole concept of, let's do this. Let's create a class of storytelling, not in a sense of literature or something, but with the concept of telling your own story, writing a new story. There's a lot of inner city kids at this school. I said, look, what if we got them all to write a new story about themselves? What if we really got them to buy into the concept that they can write their own story about their future? Of course, nobody's going to do that class in a public school setting, but it's just because it doesn't match the rest of the narrative of stuff. But in reality, that would be a great workshop. That would be a great class. That would be something that, I could see it being, whether, you do an online class, whether you do a seminars where you have story seminars, telling seminars around the country where people can really come in and have limited to like 10 people, where you have 10 people there and you're all going to tell your story. You're all going to work on a new story. And it is such an incredible tool or a gift that it changes everything. That story is the law of attraction when done properly. It's it. It is.
It is.
And,
yeah. Well, let me take advantage of the fact that we're talking to an audience right now, and I just want to ask our audience if this sounds like it resonates with you, the idea of having some sort of a seminar or workshop or something where we're all, maybe it's something we do online, where we're working on our stories together. Is that something that's of interest? If it is, go to the website and click the contact page, or just send me an email. My email address is walt@loatoday.net. But just send me a note in some way and say, yeah, that sounds interesting, because I mean, it's something that I think would probably be really good, but I may be wrong. Maybe this is not anything that resonates with people. So I want to hear, at least one or two people saying, yeah, that resonates with me. So I can say, oh, okay, yeah, I can see this is something that might be of interest. Otherwise, why bother to pursue it, right?
Right. Well, and the idea that when people see the value of it, I would think, you can never predict how people respond to certain things.
Right.
When you see the value of being able to tell your story with the law of attraction concept in mind, or using the law of attraction, and having the feedback from other people to help you from getting it, where you fall back into that negative self-defeating type thing, there has to be a matching action plan with the story. There has to be something that you're capable of doing. There has to be, but we're capable of so much more than we're willing to admit. It's being stuck in the cycle of the past is what the story the lens we're wearing right now is based on the historical stuff we've been through. All that stuff is the lens that's filtering it. So having somebody help remove that lens and focus on where we're at and move forward, that would be just a great gift. It would be an amazing thing. I imagine there would be several people that would be interested in that.
I would think so too. I mean, that's why I put it out there to see if we actually do get responses about it. But I would think so too. I think at least for now, I'm going to pursue it a little bit just to see, what can we figure out? How can we figure out what to put together and how to put it together? I mean, we do have. Fortunately, actually, we do have a platform that we can use, the Zoom platform that you and I use and that callers use to call in. We could actually also use that for an online workshop, now that I think about it. And in fact, You know what? I think it actually has a tool built into it. I'll have to check this out. But I think there's a tool that allows, like if you have an audience of, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 40 people, something like that, and you want to break up into little groups, I think it allows you to do that. So you could have like, 2 or 3 people get together in a little sub room, and they're sharing their little bits of, whatever the exercise is, starting to make their first emotional connection to becoming the new strong person, or whatever the exercise is. So I'm going to look into that, see if there's a way to do that.
That'd be great. And there's all kinds of, I take a bunch of online trainings and classes, and I love our platform right now. That there's all kinds of things that we could do to get that out there. I know there's a gentleman that I met. He's a really good guy. He came out and he was doing weekend, like 1 day positive psychology trainings. He's a psychologist, and for most people who have any type of certification or licensure, you're required to have X number of continuing education credits every year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And so he offered 3, I think he was able to give 3 continuing education credits for his positive psychology.
Oh, nice.
And I, of course, I'm the first one that signed up. And I think he probably had 10 people there, and we, paid a couple $100 each to be there. And plus he was able to sell his materials, which I bought his materials.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which was all good stuff. I really liked what he had. So, I mean, I could see that being not that we're just looking at it as a way to make money, but it certainly is something he was able to figure out how to make a reasonable living, do 2 or 3 of those a week, spread out, and it's pretty good. And so the concept for us is, I always would love to, one of the things that I would love to have happen, and again, I love it in concept, but probably, view it as like it just one of those things. I would love to either, with an existing university or a going forward kind of concept of, love to have a law of attraction, metaphysical, sort of a way of making that a course in college, if not an entire field to look into,
sure.
Having just make it very specific, piece of law, like Harvard has one of the most popular classes it has is a positive psychology class.
That's true.
It's full, and they have a lot of people doing that, but actually people have always, there's more acceptance for the positive psychology side than the law of attraction side.
Yeah.
Because so many people view the law of attraction thing as a sort of a woo-woo,
right,
metaphysical, spiritual kind of thing, when in reality, it basically is saying the same thing. The positive psychology folks hate me to say that, but it's true.
That's true.
Yeah. They are, a lot of it say the same thing, but they take sort of more of the spiritual concepts out. But these are all things that are exciting. This is what makes the law of attraction. So there's really limitless stuff you can do with it. But when you break it down to the storytelling piece, and if that's where I start with people. It's the simplest, but I get their story now. Tell me your story now. And almost inevitably, it's in some form or fashion, there's 80 versions of why this person is being victimized by society and their own thoughts, and we build from there. And that's basically what happens.
You talked about a money making piece, which is fine. I think my dream is actually to create a free piece, a piece that anybody can
Absolutely.
Connect into, and that, maybe it provides like the first basic training in how to start telling your own story, and how to change the story, and how to actually take real steps in your own life right now during the workshop or the seminar or whatever it is, to actively change the story. And then for those people who really want to pursue it, then we could create like a paid version, so they could get an ongoing thing. But I'd like to have something that's just available for everybody.
Well, I agree with. I always believe. I would love to do everything for free. It would be awesome to be able to give all this out there for free. But I do believe one of the interesting things that I found, Walt, is and it's sort of an attraction type thing. Is I try historically to do a few pro bono cases a week. And, just to give back, and there's people that can't afford my services, so I try to do a few.
And some of them have been really good stories, because you've shared some of those stories on here, the ones that you did pro bono. Some of them have been amazing stories.
some of them have. But one of the interesting things, also the other piece, not to emphasize the negative, people that are paying for their services with me are very good about, if they're not going to show up, they call. They're usually the only ones that I've ever had that have just not shown up with no call have been pro bono.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Because a lot of them view it as, oh, well, if it's free, there's not as much value in it. And so sometimes, even if it's $5, sometimes there's value in that. So when I ever mention something as a money maker, it's not always about making money, but sometimes the people putting that value to something really helps a lot. And, again, that's part of storytelling. If you're going to tell a story, well, if it's free, I've always taken these free short courses online. You get them all the time, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to sell you on their concept, and they'll give you a really good piece for free and then hope you sign up for it. Well, I take all of those. And I don't sign up for many of the paid things, but I really find great value in those. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
And so with all of this, it gets back to the point of whatever story you're going to tell is yours to create. You woke up this morning with an opportunity to write whatever story you want from today going forward. That's amazing to me. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the opportunity is virtually unlimited. The only limits are the ones we place in our own minds. And those are the ones we're constantly at battle with. Yeah. It's a hard concept at first to buy into, especially if it's a new one to you. I know it was for me. But over time, I've really come to appreciate the fact that every single limit, even the ones that don't seem to be the limits that I placed, I still place them. And that's good news in that it also means that because I place them, I can unplace them. I can replace them with something else. So it's actually a very empowering concept from my viewpoint. But you're right. That's a big deal.
Right. I have a man that was convinced that he did not get jobs because he was short. He grew up. He was like 5'8", and he said, "Well, I don't get jobs because I walk in interviewing and people are judging me because I'm short." I said, "Well, first of all, you don't seem that short to me." But I said, "But you're right. You're not getting jobs because you're short." And then he looked at me like, "Well," he goes, "Well, I thought you just said I was." I said, "No, you're not getting jobs because you're short, because you believe you're not getting jobs because you're short." That's the answer.
Yeah.
Whatever you're putting out there, whatever you want to assign to it, you can assign to it. But that's the answer, buddy.
Yeah, well, it's the Henry Ford quote, right? The Henry Ford quote is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yes, absolutely. And that's it. That's what that storytelling allows you to do. If you can tell the story and really make it something that you really believe you can achieve, there's nothing that can stop that from happening except you. And that's the answer, is what you get up every day and what you do. And one of the reasons that you and I get together every Thursday and you do twice a day, every day, is we believe in this. I live this. Yeah. This is my life. I owe pretty much my success to this concept. And I believe it. We're doing this out of a passion. One day I really think this is going to really take off and our show's going to be huge. But right now I'm doing it just out of sheer love of what I do.
That's right.
And you do the same thing.
Absolutely, I do. Yeah. And I love the fact that we're now saying, okay, so let's improve our stories. Let's get our stories into a better place. Let's commit to doing that. And one other story I do want to make sure that we don't miss before we're done is the story about how do they reach you, Joel, if they're looking for help learning to tell how their own stories work in private.
Well, that's great. Appreciate that. My website is joelelston.com. My email address is joelelston@gmail.com. Get me either way. Contact information on the webpage, or just email me directly. I do phone sessions. I do public speaking. I do corporate trainings. I bring these concepts to individuals and corporations, and I love doing it. So if you're in need or want to talk, let me know. Be glad to talk.
Excellent. Joel, it's been great. I know you're going to be away next week, so we'll talk again in 2 weeks.
Great to talk to you, my friend.
All right. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.